Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hennepin County's Foster Care Nuts and Bolts Child Foster Care the Hennepin Way training. My name is Sunita, and I am one of the foster care licensors. As an overview for the training agenda, Part 1, we will be going over the Hennepin County team. What is foster care? The foster parent guide and the foster parent agreement. In part 2 of this training, we will be reviewing the mandated reporter, reporting responsibilities, child protection process, complaints, and how to prepare yourself for complaints. In part 3, we'll discuss confidentiality, boundaries, sleeping arrangements, visitation, and the placement process and forms. In part 4, we will review supporting foster parents, training requirements, which will include initial and ongoing training, North Star information, and reimbursement, which are the basic maintenance and MAPSI. Through part 5, we will look at permanency planning, placement process, forms, important information, and then we'll have time for some questions. Thank you. Let's get started with part 1. For part 1, we'll go over the Hennepin County team, what is foster care, the foster parent guide, and the foster parent agreement. The Hennepin County team. The Child's Social Service Unit. The Social Service Unit could consist of foster parents of the siblings if the child has siblings that are placed in another foster home, the foster care licensing social worker, which would be the social worker that assists with all licensing aspects, including initial trainings and following through the journey of being licensed as a foster parent, child protection worker, child placing worker, children's mental health worker, if this is a need that the child has, unit supervisors of social workers, a guardian ad litem, or a child's lawyer if the child is old enough. The child's community support. This could be a school social worker, a school psychologist, community psychologist, counseling resources, hospital and physicians, a public health nurse, the legal community, which would consist of police, county attorney, probation officers. The child's family unit could consist of the child's mother, child's father, or other legal guardian, such as grandparents, aunts, uncles, or close family friends, a child's sibling at home, or that may be in another placement. What is foster care? And how do foster parents play a role in the life of a child placed in their foster home? Foster parents can provide a child with a safe and nurturing family life. This could include providing for the basic needs of a child, including a child in the activities of daily family life, things such as eating dinner together as a family vacations, or family outings. Facilitating a child's school attendance, ensuring that children are getting to school, that their academic needs are being met, attending meetings, helping with homework, providing a child with timely access to basic emergency and specialized medical, mental health, and dental care. These needs can also be supported with the child's social worker. Explaining household rules. This could be things such as our family practices respect. We practice keeping our hands to ourselves and respecting each other's space. Providing supervision. Foster parents are expected to know the whereabouts of a foster child. If at any time a whereabouts of a child placed in your foster home are unknown, please reach out to your licensor and first and foremost, the child's worker. Foster parents can increase their understanding of and respect for the religious, racial, and cultural heritage of a child and their family. This could be attending community events, it could be food, it could be language, but being mindful of special cultural heritage and practices or belief that a child may have. The foster parent guide. Foster parents receive the foster parent guide once a licensing worker is assigned to work with your family. If you do not receive the foster parent guide, please check with your licensor. You will receive the foster parent guide at your first meeting with your assigned licensing worker. It is very important to read through the entire guidebook as it provides very pertinent and important information on foster parenting. It talks about licensing rules as well as procedures. It includes important and commonly used phone numbers. You will also use this guidebook to complete the required foster parent guide test. The foster parent agreement. In this agreement, which you should also receive and review with your licensing worker at the initial visit, entails what you can expect from the licensing agency and what the licensing agency expects from you as a foster parent. This agreement is a document from the Minnesota Department of Human Services, often referred to as DHS, and is required of all foster parents. Of all the documents you receive at this initial phase, this agreement should be thoroughly read and understood as it contains the basic of foster care for children. If you have any questions or would like more clarity on the information, please ask these questions with your licensing worker at that visit. Continuing the foster parent agreement, let's talk about placement. Number one, consider foster care a temporary living situation for a child. Reunification for youth that are in foster care is always the primary goal. Foster care supports and attempts to place siblings together to maintain that connection. Moving down to number two, foster parents accepting children for foster care placement. Foster parents will only accept placements for children who are placed by the supervising agency, are placed in connection with a plan approved by the supervising agency, a placement that is approved by your licensing worker, and workers will come out to meet in your home with the child at least monthly or as needed with foster parents. For your licensing social worker, it may be quarterly, whereas a child's placing worker or a child social worker would meet at least monthly with the child. Placement again. Ensure that when a child is placed in your foster care, that the social worker and the child or the children have opportunities to meet alone as needed, or again, at least monthly. That the child's personal property and funds are available and that they have space to keep those items and that they are available to them as needed. There are times when there may be an unplanned discharge, which is sometimes referred to as a disruption of placement. Foster parents may request that the child is placed elsewhere. If this at any time becomes a situation, consult with your licensing worker. Foster parents are expected to give appropriate notice. Placement workers, which are the child social workers, have at minimum 45 days after given written notice by the foster parents to find another placement for a child disrupted from the current foster home. Just to touch on this a little bit more, if there are supports and foster parents observe that there are challenges that children in foster care are presenting with, please immediately consult with your licensing worker as well as the child social worker. The licensing agency, which is also referred to as a supervising agency, works with foster parents to connect youth to those supports so that we can stabilize a child as much as we can in a placement. If there are safety concerns, we definitely want our foster families to be safe as well as the child that's in their current care. So if there is an immediate need, then again, just reach out right away. Foster parents always should need to consult with the supervising agency to obtain consent before taking a child out of state or out of the foster home for longer than 3 nights. If you are planning a vacation and you would like to take a child in your foster care along with you, you want to talk to the child's placing worker. They would need a court approval for these activities. If a child is out of the foster home for longer than 3 nights, you also want to connect with the child's placing worker. There's information that should be shared, such as where the family will be going, if there's an emergency, what would be the safety plan, and also who to contact if there's a need to reach out to the family for whatever given reason. Foster parents should always maintain continuous contact with the supervising agency regarding any matters significant to the adjustment and welfare of a child. Foster parents should apply the prudent parent standard and support a foster child's participation in extracurricular activities, social and cultural activities typical for the child's age, and activities that are developmentally appropriate. And this information is provided more in depth in the prudent parent and normalcy training. Regularly engage with a child's parents, guardians to facilitate a co-parenting relationship when the goal is reunification, unless such a relationship poses a danger to the mental or physical health of a child or the foster parents. And this information can be shared with the placement worker, or the placement worker, if it is an initial concern, will share that information with foster parents. If you have any questions regarding situations where you're unsure if there should be contact or you're not aware if there's a safety concern, or maybe you see in at a visit or over a telephone conversation, Please report any concerns to the placing worker to talk through those concerns and how we could best meet the needs and the best interests of any child that is placed in foster care. Plans and court. The agency agrees to include foster parents in the development and implementation of the out-of-home placement plan for youth in foster care. Foster parents are to sign and be provided a copy of the out-of-home placement plan. Included in this plan is information regarding the child's case plan, and information such as if there's a current doctor that the child regularly sees, if there are any special needs, if there are other workers involved with the child, visitation, there may be academic information, if there are special education needs. So it's a plan developed around the child to best support the child in foster care. The agency also agrees to send foster parents written notice of any administrative review and or court hearings, and to ensure that the foster parent is aware of their right to be heard. The courts can order things that the county must do for a case plan for a birth parent or guardian, but the court cannot order a foster parent to do anything. Report, comply, and consult. Report to the supervising agency any plans to move your family's residence prior to any move or any change in household membership. The foster home is a licensed environment, so there are things that need to be reviewed in a foster home to ensure that that home is safe and that it is a space that would be approved for foster care. Any change in household membership includes anyone who moves in the home or out of the home. Report to the supervising agency any serious family illness and any serious illness or accident involving a foster child. If there are situations that involve a family illness or any illness or accident involving a foster child, foster parents would need to fill out an incident report and also immediately follow up with the child social worker as well as your licensing social worker. Comply with agency policies prohibiting corporal punishment, relying instead upon other constructive methods of discipline, such as redirection, comforting, having a conversation with a child in your home. Also, it may be a time to review expectations and how come those expectations are in place to ensure the safety and their well-being while in the foster home. Corporal punishment, physical punishment, any verbal or act that could instill fear in a child is prohibited. Foster parents want to immediately report a missing child to the responsible county or the tribal agency and provide information such as when the child left, what they were wearing, and other relevant information. This could be their age, this could be their additional mental health needs, if any, if they left with persons that are known or maybe unknown, or the last time that you've seen the child. If foster parents are unable to contact county or tribal case managers, immediately call the agency's 24-hour coverage line and also want to follow up with the police. Youth in foster care are considered vulnerable, And we want to ensure that safety protocols are put in place immediately. Notify the agency again immediately of any safety concerns that affect a child.
Part 2. Part 2 training topics include mandated reporting, child protection process, complaints, and how to prepare yourself for complaints. All foster parents are mandated reporters. This means that you are obligated to report suspected physical and sexual child abuse and neglect. You may need to call 911. You will need to call child protection, including the 24-hour number, as well as the child's foster social worker and your licensing worker, and complete a written incident report form that gets submitted to your licensing worker and the child's worker. This is a licensing requirement to complete written incident report forms. Child protection process. This is a legal process. When a child protection report is made, if it's accepted for investigation, an investigator will make a determination, or if there's a report to the police, they may remove children. Children are placed either into a temporary or longer-term foster home. They might even be placed with a family member on a 72-hour health and welfare hold until a juvenile court hearing can be held. At that hearing, the judge will determine if the children will need further protective care. The parents will be asked for names of family or friends they would like to have care for their children. The kinship worker is assigned to make contact with those individuals and screen them to determine if they are a viable option. All family or friends that care for children will need to be licensed. A child protection worker is assigned to the parents, and that person develops a case plan that is based on the outcome of recommendations from the juvenile court hearing. If the children are in a temporary foster home, a longer term placement with relatives or kin needs to be found, or a non-relative. The parents should begin working their case plan, and depending on their progress, visitation plan is determined, and that is court ordered. Periodic court hearings are arranged to review parents' progress, typically every 60 to 90 days. The social worker is looking for permanency options for the children. If the parents are granted a trial home visit or reunification, the foster placement would be ending, or the department may file a termination of parental rights and a trial would be scheduled. Sometimes there's a decision for a transfer of legal custody that would not terminate the parental rights. That is typically to a relative, but can also be offered in a non-relative situation if the parties are in agreement. Complaints. These are concerns voiced by any number of sources about you and the care you are providing to foster children. The source could be the foster child, birth parents, school, social worker, or any number of community persons like a teacher or hospital personnel. We may or may not be able to disclose who makes a complaint. The nature could be in regards to supervision, discipline, food provided or not, clothing worn to school, appointments missed, medications administered are just a few of the examples. The complaint could be through a child protection report, and if that is accepted for investigation, there would be an investigator assigned, or we may just get that report directly in licensing. Make sure you read the foster parent guide so you understand the complaint process. To prepare yourself for complaints, you want to have good documentation and record keeping. You should have a record of the child's medical and educational needs and appointments, and those should have been communicated to the child's worker. Follow that safety agreement in terms of discipline. Follow the grievance procedure and your drug and alcohol policy. Update the licensing worker and the placing worker on changes to your household. So if somebody is going to be staying at your home or leaving your home, if you're going to be thinking about moving, if you have a job change or a health change. And that includes for your children, your biological children. So we always need to know of significant changes in a foster home environment. To prepare yourself for complaints, you want to make sure you complete written incident reports. Those forms are on the foster parent webpage and should be submitted within 24 hours of an incident. Those are not required by the placing workers, but they are required by licensing. Within 24 hours or less, you would report to the local law enforcement and child protection if you don't know where the child is. You would definitely call our 24-hour number. If it's after hours, weekends, or holidays. If a child goes on run, you do need to file a police report every single time, as well as notify the workers. You want to make sure you're following supervision standards that's appropriate to the unique age and need of the child. Children are often not in line with their chronological age, so they may be emotionally less developed and would require a different type of supervision. Make sure you're following that confidentiality rule. You should not disclose something unless you have a business reason to do so regarding a foster child. And if you're not sure, it's fine to say to someone, you know what, let me find out more and get back with you. So for example, if you wanted to sign a child up for a program, you cannot just release their name, date of birth, and a bunch of information about them. You would contact the child's worker and say, hey, we're interested in signing up for this program at the park where I need to disclose information, and make sure that you are keeping in line with confidentiality. Make sure you know and use your resources. The Foster Parent Guide is one of your best resources to understanding and knowing all the licensing rules and expectations. The Child's Out-of-Home Placement Plan. So if there's a complaint that you weren't allowing the child to do something, but in their out-of-home placement plan, it says right there, this child is not allowed to do that thing, then you are right, you are covered. You're following the plan. You want to make sure that you are keeping up with documentation and emails from the agency. So make sure you check those. If you hear about a complaint, go ahead and locate that information. Somebody might say, hey, the foster parent didn't communicate that to us. They didn't let us know this information. But in fact, you sent an email. So when I contact you and say, hey, I received this concern or complaint about this thing, you can forward me that email, and then I can present that information to say, yes, in fact, the foster parent did communicate this, um, and that has happened, and that's considered resolved, and that you were doing exactly what you know that you need to be doing. You can attend support groups within the agency or at the state level. It is really important to decide what is really helpful with you at the support group. I have noticed that some groups don't really have a positive vibe and may have negative or factually untrue information about foster care programs or agencies. So it is good to be mindful about that situation. Make sure you know that foster parent agreement. I frequently hear people say, well, I didn't know I needed to tell you this. And it's very clearly stated in the guide. It's clearly stated in the agreement that we need to know this information. I don't need to know it within 5 minutes, but I need to know, as quickly as possible, especially if there's a serious health condition. If you're in doubt, reach out, ask your licensor or the placing worker. I really encourage you to communicate with your licensor. We are familiar with licensing rules, regulations, and what needs to be followed. Whereas the placing worker might say something like, "Oh, I don't need that from you." Well, they may not be aware that as far as licensing goes, they actually should be a part of that communication or that information. Make sure you're cooperating with the agency. Return our phone calls, emails, and texts in a timely manner. So occasionally I have people like they don't respond and like a week goes by and I'm thinking, where's this foster parent? Why can't I reach them? Especially if I've sent multiple ways. And if you change your phone number, we need to know right away. I don't want to find out, after I've sent you 4 text messages and I finally send you an email that, oh yeah, I changed my phone number. And I'm like, okay, well, essentially, I really, I couldn't reach you. I didn't have the phone number for the foster home. So that's really, really important to make sure the phone number is kept up to date with the agency. And that includes for the placing workers. Part 3, our training topics include confidentiality, boundaries, sleeping arrangements, and visitation. Confidentiality means you're keeping information about a child and their family confidential. You're not talking about that. You're only discussing it with appropriate agency staff or other professionals designated by the agency. If you're not sure if you can get into a conversation with somebody, even another professional, you can always say, hey, I need to check on a couple of things. Let me get back to you. And contact licensing or the worker, or if you're contacted by someone and you don't know who that is, and nobody communicated with you like, hey, this agency is going to be calling, I would definitely take the information down and send an email and confirm what's going on. You cannot share pictures or identifying information on social media. That includes private groups anywhere. Parents are free to do what they want. So sometimes we do get mentioned that, well, the parents are, plastering their kids all over social media, whatever, during their visits. If there's something concerning that you're seeing, you could relay that, but you are not, really to be monitored. That's not something you need to be monitoring. That's not your role. Our agency does handle those type of things. Once a child leaves a foster home, information is protected. So there is no right to information once a child leaves your care. Boundaries, it's good to have those, maintain those. Around contacts and visits, should be outlined in the written out-of-home placement plan. You should have that within 30 days of a placement. And if you don't have that, please notify your licensing worker and the placing worker and request that copy. Typically it's mailed out, and court orders. So sometimes visits move unsupervised, and foster parents and family are kind of arranging those visits. But if they're not on a consistent schedule, that can lead to a complaint. The parent says, hey, I thought my visits were going to be on Saturdays from 2 to 5, and the foster parents keep changing it. Every weekend it's something else. And that they want their time, right, that they were expecting. So be really careful about rearranging things, keep the workers in the loop. Bio parents cannot spend the night in a foster home. So sometimes we're making a transition to reunification and a placing worker might start trying to make these type of arrangements, or sometimes even the court might order something. Then the license would have to close. Once people are made aware of that, again, licensing workers really know these rules. Other workers do not necessarily know these. It's not really in their role area to know that. So we help make sure everyone is aware. So if you get, there's some talk about that, you're saying like, hey, we're looking at moving to reunification. Um, and we're thinking that should happen, in the relative foster home. That can happen, but everyone needs to be aware the license will be closing and it has to be reissued if something doesn't work out. It's not super challenging to do, but it does require um, kind of reapplying again. As a foster parent, you're an extension of the department. That means Hennepin County's authority. So it's very good, particularly if you're a relative, to make sure that you're making, parents aware in a kind way, but setting that boundary right away, saying, look, I'm a mandated reporter now. I have to get licensed, right, to take care of the kids. So I am tasked with that responsibility of meeting their needs. And that means I have to follow all the rules. There's no exceptions and refer them back to their worker. You don't need to meet the parents' basic needs. You don't need to give them rides, give them money, give them anything really. that should really be sent back to their worker. So it's really good right away to start setting that boundary of like, you know what, that sounds really challenging. Yeah, definitely talk to your social worker about that and just kind of send them on their way over there. At times you might feel overwhelmed or stressed. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Use your respite, communicate with your licensing worker for support. We're not just here because we like rules, right? We're here because we like working with foster families. We want to make sure you feel supported. Some foster parents I talk to every week. Okay, what's going on now, especially if they're taking multiple placements or emergency placements. We want to make sure we're there for you and you're not feeling like, wow, I took these kids and now, I don't hear from anybody. Sleeping arrangements for infants to 1 year, it's a crib only. Relatives can use a pack and play that should have been approved. So make sure that you know that information, but typically that is considered portable for trips or visits. No bassinets. Babies can't be sleeping in car seats or other things. So obviously they fall asleep in the car. You cannot put a crib in the car. But once you get home, you do need to take the baby and place them in the crib. And those cribs do need to meet consumer safety guidelines, as well as any other infant and baby equipment. There's just been another recall after a bunch of infant deaths in those little seats with like that wire thing in the fabric, whatever those things are called. There was just a recall on those that those are not to be used for sleeping, and it was very specific around sleeping. And we know babies fall asleep all over the place, and you got to just get them back in the crib as a licensed foster parent. Each child should have their own bed. If you need assistance with beds and you're a relative, please reach out to the placing worker. There can be arrangements there. You are free to get like used bed frames and things like that. If you have any changes in bedrooms or sleeping spaces, we would need to know that as well. But children should be sleeping in a bedroom. It should have a window and a door, a closet. In some cities, a closet makes it a legal bedroom, but that is not the case for every city. It can be a non-traditional space as long as it has two exits and there's a place to store clothing. Relatives can get a variance for a foster child to sleep somewhere other than a bedroom, but often we just have that person sleep out elsewhere and the children are in the bedroom. Children 5 years and older of opposite genders in foster care cannot share a bedroom. So if you only have one bedroom available, you can take children 5 and under of opposite gender or same gender can share. If you have questions about that, please reach out to your licensing worker. Occasionally, there are other arrangements made, especially on an emergency basis, but just make sure you're checking in with your licensor about that. I've had those arrangements made by other workers, and licensing was never made aware of that because maybe we hadn't even really been assigned yet when all these things were going on. So make sure you have your documentation around that in case there were to ever to be a concern or a complaint. Visitation is of high importance to maintain a child's connection and bond with their parents and siblings. So a visitation plan is typically established by the social worker. It's great to let them know of timing that would work for you. It is something that we want to have reviewed periodically. So if a parent hasn't shown up to, I think it's like 3 visits or something like that, there can be a consideration of maybe they need to call ahead to verify they're coming before you get everyone in the car and try to get to wherever you're going. And that has been arranged on a regular basis to ensure that somebody can reach the parent and make sure they're coming. Visits do affect their behavior. So if parents don't show up, that's very upsetting for kids, right? That wouldn't make anyone feel good. Social workers can assist you to develop some strategies to support kids for maintaining their relationships and working through some of that. You are responsible for transporting. There is not a certain amount of visits you're responsible for. We are doing whatever is court ordered. If it's excessive, you can get some compensation through the MAPC. So I had a foster parent in Hennepin County, driving out to Meeker County every weekend. And that's outside of the county metro area. And in that case, in fact, Dad had a vehicle. And I said, why can't he come and pick up his own kids? I mean, right? That would be a part of reunification and parenting. And so I think we were able to reach a compromise on that one because it just started to be like 2 hours in the car, much less, and just for an hour visit or two starts to feel stressful for everybody. So we were able to figure out another option where the department could support the parent with whatever he needed for his vehicle so that he could pick up his kids. You do not need to supervise visits. You're not expected to. So if there is talk about that, make sure that you check in with your licensing worker as well as express if that's something you're not available for. Occasionally, a worker might say that you're required to do that, but you are not, and they do not know licensing rules and policies and procedures. So you can definitely request that you have a conversation around that. If you're comfortable doing that, that can be an option. If you have a problem with a visit of any kind, make sure you're communicating that. If children come back with concerning situations like clearly their diaper hasn't been changed, they're coming back with they're really hungry and thirsty, it's clear they haven't eaten, or they come back with any other concern, complete that incident report form and submit that. And you might need to file a report as well. Children are going through the trauma of being separated from their parents, so visiting can stir up a lot of emotions. And sometimes parents, at those visits, they really want their kids to be with them, and so they might start having those type of conversations, and then the kids think they're going home, and then they're not, and it just, it can be really upsetting. So we just kind of have to work through that together.
Hi there, welcome to part 4. In part 4, we'll cover the following topics: supporting foster parents, reporting responsibilities, training requirements, North Star information, and finally reimbursements. As a foster parent, you're part of a team or a network support system. That team will include, among others, foster parents, birth parents, the child's worker, licensing worker, the guardian ad litem, community professionals, and attorneys. This team would do the best they can to support the foster child in the placement home. Foster parents will have regular contact with the child's worker and other community professionals. Licensing workers will conduct quarterly meetings or check-ins, annual reviews, and relicensing, discuss roles, responsibilities, and boundaries. They can also discuss any needs and next steps. Your licensor will remain a constant source of support to you. They may ask you for feedback regarding agency practices, and may even ask you to participate in panels and other groups. Although required to obtain and maintain your foster care license, training is intended to support you as a foster parent and to help you develop any skills that will help you better support the child in your home. Hennepin County also offers state liability insurance coverage in the event that damage may occur. Please inquire with your licensing worker for further information. Hennepin County also offers support groups. This is a safe space in which foster parents come together to converse, discuss issues, and support each other. As foster parents, you may also utilize respite, substitute caregivers, babysitters, and daycare. If you are a licensed foster parent and you plan on going on vacation, leave the state, or just need a break, etc., you are entitled to 21 days of respite care. Here at Hennepin County, we have non-relative licensed foster homes that provide respite care. Foster parents may also utilize substitute care, which is when you arrange for someone like a family member or a friend to come into your home and provide that care. Substitute caregivers must have a background clearance on file, and they must complete the necessary trainings. Although we understand emergencies happen, it is best practice for foster parents to notify their licensing workers of their need for respite or substitute care 30 days in advance. If respite or substitute care is utilized, Caregiver information forms need to be completed in order to provide basic information regarding the children. In addition, miscellaneous expenditure forms need to be completed in order to process financial reimbursements for respite and substitute care. If a babysitter is utilized, they will need to complete the necessary trainings. For instance, if they do plan to care for a child who is 5 years or younger, they will need to complete Sudden Unexplained Infant Death/head trauma training. Child care grants may be available to foster children ages 0 to 5. Eligibility requirements will also require foster parents to be either working or attending school. The chosen child care needs to be accredited and 3 or 4-star rated on Parent Aware. Before placement begins, please discuss this child care grant with a placement worker so that the process can immediately begin.
Supporting foster children and bio families. Develop nurturing relationships with children in need. Develop nurturing relationships with foster child's family members. Be a supportive listener and model healthy communication and relationships. Provide a safe environment for children while their parents work through services. Help facilitate healthy relationships with siblings living separately through constant visitation and contact. Initiate foster care initial calls to legal guardians. Be supportive of LGBTQ+ youth in foster care. LGBTQ+ youth in foster care. Youth who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, or other diverse identity are overrepresented in foster care, with at least 3 studies estimating about 30% of youth in foster care identify as LGBTQ+. LGBTQ+ youth experience higher rates of anxiety, depression, alcohol and drug use, and other mental health challenges than the general population. Studies show that these rates are the result of stigma and discrimination that LGBTQ+ people experience from others. How to be an affirming and inclusive foster home. Use inclusive language. These are the words and phrases you use that avoid biases, slang, and expressions that discriminate against groups of people based on race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and ability. Use the pronouns and names of the youth's choosing. Address all inappropriate jokes or comments. Celebrate diversity in all forms. This could be pride events or other events that would represent who that child sees themselves as. Encourage respect from visiting friends and family members. Allow youth to participate in activities that interest them, regardless of gender stereotypes. Respect privacy about coming out or being out. For example, if a child is comfortable enough to disclose their gender identity or sexual orientation to you, it is important to have a conversation about what that means for other people knowing. The child may just feel comfortable coming out to you and is not comfortable with other people knowing. Invite and welcome their friends to the home. Consider events and resources. You can utilize your licensing worker, the child's worker, or online resources to find different events in the community. For example, Pride, Queer Prom, and LGBTQ+ meetups in the community. Advocate for respect and culturally competent services. Ensure that the youth is connected to resources such as therapy and medical providers that are well versed in the LGBTQ+ community. Foster care initial calls to legal guardian. Significant stress and confusion occurs for children and youth when they experience separation from their primary caregivers due to out-of-home placement. At the earliest stage of out-of-home placement, there is often a lack of connection/relationship established between the birth and the foster family. This initial comfort call is meant to address these early stage difficulties for children and youth and their families. Goals of the initial call. Set the stage for partnership and co-parenting between foster and the birth family. Open the door for birth and foster families to ask questions to one another that support the child or youth during the difficult time of initial separation. Help the child or children get their immediate needs met by caregivers. This comfort call occurs within the first 48 hours after the child or youth has been placed outside of their family's care. This call is not conducted in the presence of the child or youth. Its primary purpose is initiating partnership between the birth family and foster parents. If the birth family is not ready to participate in the conversation, that is okay. Offer understanding by sharing with them that you would want to know this information if the roles were reversed and can answer their questions later if they prefer. The removal of children is stressful and overwhelming for parents. There may be another family member the birth family would like to have called and relay information, such as a grandmother or other relative or family friend.
As a foster care parent, you're held to a very high standard. Part of that standard is being in communication with the department, including reporting responsibilities. You should report all significant changes or incidents to the child's social worker and also your licensing social worker. For example, notify your licensing social worker if you plan on moving. This is particularly important if you move to another county. If that is the case, paperwork and coordination will be required with that respective county. Notify your licensing social worker if you're expecting anyone to move into your home. This will require more paperwork, interviews, and a background clearance to be on file. In addition, if any household members moves out of your home, including the foster children, you should also notify your licensing social worker. Of course, if any of your contact information updates, please notify your licensing social worker. If anyone is staying overnight in your home, notify your licensing social worker. In addition, do not allow anyone in your home, even to visit, who may present a safety risk to the foster child in your home. Of course, if you have any further questions, contact your worker. Also notify your licensing social worker if there are any changes in the bedrooms and sleeping areas. For example, if you added or removed a bedroom, or added or removed furniture. If for you or any household member has any contact with child protection investigations, that includes if you are making a child protection report or if a child protection report is made on you, you need to contact your worker immediately. If you do happen to receive a phone call regarding placing a foster child in your home, please refer to that worker to your licensing social worker for further approval. Training requirements are an important aspect of your foster care license. The following classes need to be completed before licensure and within the first year after licensure. They are prudent parenting, mental health. If you expect to take children under the age of 8 or have a child under the age of 8 already in your home, you are required to do children and restraint systems training or car seat training. If a child is 5 years and younger, you're expected to also complete sudden unexplained infant death syndrome and abusive head trauma training. Other training requirements include nuts and bolts, racial identity development, discipline in foster care, developmental impact of trauma, introduction to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and foster parent guide. Speak to your licensor regarding these training requirements. When these trainings need to be completed will depend on whether you are a non-relative or relative provider. As expected, training requirements will be ongoing after your initial licensure. Below are some of the details. After licensing, all license holders will be required to complete 12 hours of training each year. You'll be required to complete 5 hours of Hennepin County sponsored classes, which generally is about 2 classes. Every year, you'll be required to complete a minimum of 1 hour of mental health training and a training on fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. 6 of your 12 hours can be from the following categories: online videos, books, articles, and other readings of your choice, specific to the needs of the foster children. If you're attending meetings or facilitating services about the child in your care, for example, mental health appointments, medical appointments, or educational appointments, you can also count that towards your training hours. If you believe a training may qualify for credit, speak to your licensor. They can review the curriculum and approve it for credit. Again, ongoing training requirements are an important aspect of your foster care license. If trainings are not completed in a timely manner, correction orders may be given, and ongoing training issues may result in a fine. North Star Care for Children consolidates and simplifies 3 child welfare programs, which includes family foster care, kinship assistance, and adoption assistance, in order to support families caring for children who must be removed from the home for reasons of child protection, delinquency, or disability. It unifies benefits and processes for these programs, creating uniform benefits for children over the age of 5. It maximizes efficiencies and realigns funds to provide a single program that focuses on the needs of the children, ensuring that each child has a permanent home or family. Again, its goal is to streamline benefits for children who enter foster care, to avoid payment discrepancies between permanency options, to reduce children who exit foster care without achieving permanency, to reduce the racial disparities among racial ethnic groups, for instance, African American and Native American / Indigenous, and children who remain in long-term foster care, for example, permanent custody to the agency. And finally, to increase children who are adopted. This next topic is reimbursement, specifically the basic maintenance rate and MAPC. The monthly foster care reimbursement are based on 2 tools. The first one is the basic maintenance rate, which is based on the age of the child. The second tool is the Minnesota Assessment of Parenting for Children and Youth, or MAPC. It answers 2 questions. What are the youth's needs, and what parenting are you doing to meet those needs? For example, if you are transporting the child to extra medical or mental health appointments, or even transporting the child to visitations, that may change the MAPC level. When this assessment is completed, it's scored by DHS and assigned a level. Within 30 days of initial placement, you will receive a phone call from a MAPC assessor in order to complete the assessment. Next is Part 5 of Nuts and Bolts. Part 5 training topics include placement process, permanency planning, forms, important information, this placement process is specific to non-relative foster care providers. Immediately after your license, you'll have a profile that will be entered into our placement system. Your worker will ask you questions about your preferences, your living space, pets, and many other aspects of your home life. With the assistance of the Coordination Center and also an algorithm, your profile on a daily basis is matched with children in need of placement. Your licensing social worker will then review these matches on a daily basis. They'll either call you or email you with this information to see if you're interested. You can review this placement request form to have a better understanding of the placement process. After reviewing the matches with your worker, and if you're interested, your worker will then refer you in the system. The placement worker will receive referrals and review them. It is up to them to call you to explore a possible placement. Don't be discouraged if you do not receive a phone call. Oftentimes, placement workers make placement requests, but they are concurrently searching for a relative home. If a relative home is an option, it will always take priority. In addition, the worker will consider many different factors. For instance, location, school, family size, pets, etc. It should be noted that Hennepin County's intention is to find the best fit for the foster children, not the best fit for the foster care home. If and when the placement social worker calls you, if you have further questions regarding the child or children, this would be the perfect opportunity. Please refer to the foster parent guide for examples of questions to ask. These questions may include questions regarding visitations, transportation, school, medical, and mental health services. If both parties agree, a pre-placement visit, whether that's in your home or in a public space, may be arranged and scheduled. If the visit goes well, the placement social worker may ask you to keep the child or children, or schedule another visit. You should not feel pressured to take a placement. A denial of placement would never go against you or your home. The next topic is permanency planning. When children enter the foster care system, concurrent permanency planning immediately begins. The department will concurrently explore multiple permanency options. Its most important priority is to reunify with the birth family. In the event that reunification cannot occur, other options to explore will include the transfer of legal custody and also adoption. As a foster parent, you'll encounter plenty of forms. When you have a foster child in your home, you'll need to complete a monthly voucher in order to be reimbursed for your care. It should be noted that providing foster care is not considered income. It's considered a reimbursement. It should be reiterated that foster care providers are held to a very high standard, and completing incident reports are essential to that. If there is ever an injury to the child, however minor, whether it's a bruise, cut, mark, etc., you should complete an incident report for the child's worker and for your licensing social worker. Children who enter the foster care system are entitled to a clothing voucher. When placement occurs, please inquire with the child's worker regarding this. Other forms include respite forms. For instance, if you request respite, you'll be required to provide basic info regarding the child or children in your home. Here is a sample foster care payment voucher. Near the end of each month, a payment voucher is sent directly to you by the accounting department. On the first day of the next month, you can complete the payment voucher. This is sent directly to the accounting department. Again, it should be noted that foster care payments are not considered income. It is a reimbursement. For instance, when you complete the voucher on July 1st, you will be reimbursed for your care for the month of June. If you have issues or questions, contact the accounting department first, and then contact your licensor. The contact number for the accounting department can be located in your foster parent guide. Here's a sample incident report form. Within 24 hours of the incident, complete and send this form to the licensor and also the child's worker. If the incident involves more than one child, complete one form for each child. It should be noted here that you should not use identifying information. For example, when describing the child, you should just note child number 1 or child number 2. Of course, if you have questions whether you need to fill out the incident report, consult with your licensor. This is a sample respite reimbursement form. This form will need to be completed and submitted to your licensor for respite reimbursement. This is the respite provider/substitute caregiver information form. This is a form that would need to be completed before respite and the substitute care. You can see here, you need to provide basic info regarding the child, emergency phone numbers, appointments, visitations, and activities. The following are other important information you should know and discuss with your licensor. When placement begins, it is important for the foster parent to make contact with the birth family in order to create a healthy and working relationship. During this time, it is also important to create and maintain appropriate boundaries. Talk to your licensor regarding best practices. Once you are licensed, your personal contact, your phone number, and your address becomes public information. If you have any issues with this, please inquire with your licensor. Although a placing worker may ask you to supervise visits between the child and the parent, it is not recommended in order to maintain appropriate boundaries. Supervision is best left to the county or third parties. It should be noted that Hennepin County is not an adoption agency. Hennepin County is a foster care agency with the primary goal of reunification. However, if a child is placed in your home and they need to be adopted, Hennepin County will support this permanency plan. If you have any follow-up questions, please contact your licensor. You may also get the foster parent website from the licensor or the training coordinator. It is also important to verify your mailing address, as the training coordinator and your licensor may mail you some documents. You may also receive newsletters and information about future events. Thank you for sitting through this training. We hope the topics that were outlined in this training were helpful. Again, if you have further questions, you can always ask your licensor and also refer to the foster parent guide. And as a reminder, as a foster parent, you're not doing this alone. You're part of a team and you're part of a network support system. We're here to support you and the foster child in your home. Thank you.